Well, good morning. Welcome. Are you ready for a brand new day? Yes. A few of you are. Are you ready for a brand new day? Yes. Yes. This is what I want to talk about this morning. The wonderful dance. The dance that we do as spiritual beings in knowing the truth of who we are and stepping up and being that which we already are. Dr. Barbara had a wonderful intro for that, about accepting where we are right now, accepting our good right now. And what I want to talk about this morning are two other God qualities that Ernest Holmes talks about. The God qualities that are in us and of us. And those two qualities are this: we are imminent and transcendent. Now, imminent, if you look it up in the dictionary, means it's within you. It's inherent. It's a part of who you are. Transcendent is beyond the physical, beyond that which we can see, touch, taste, feel. And so when we look at our qualities of God, we're looking at two distinct in this world, but not of this world. Does that make sense? So the imminent means there's the God within me. And that's what Dr. Barbara was talking about. That God within us that knows, that's absolute in its recognition of who we are as divine beings. And that we can never be apart from that divine source that we already are. But transcendent, that's the dance I want to talk about this morning. Because transcendent means that we're not only accepting that which we are, but that which we are becoming. The transcendent is something that we can't quite see or feel yet. We're maybe thinking, gosh, just this morning, I was speaking with Sherry and Margot, and we were saying, wouldn't it be nice if life had a handbook? Wouldn't it be nice if there was a neon sign saying, come here, come this way, take this step? But we don't have that, do we? We have to rely upon that instinctual part of us that is trusting the self, that is transcendent. Ernest Holmes says this in both The Science of Mind, page 139, but he also thinks this is so important, it's part of our Declaration of Principles. He says the highest God and the innermost God is one God. That's the dance we're talking about. That imminent is also the same as the transcendent. And it's our job to move back and forth between the two. Are you with me? Okay. And that transcendent part, I think, is what we've been asked to step up to do in the last 2 years. That transcendent part of us that's going, I don't know what's next, but I have to trust that something in the unseen is moving for my good. I have to trust that even if I don't have the answer, something within me does. And as I accept that, as I just lean into the mystery, I get to live from that place of deepest trust and deepest faith that knows that I am the God of my being. And I can't make a mistake when I step forward. This is what we're going to just really take a look at this morning, because if I've learned anything in my however many years of ministry I've been in, I know that when we get to these parts of the unknown, that's where we're challenged most, isn't it? Because am I the only one in the room that I like certainty? I like it. It's really good to know this is what I'm going to do. And that we have been trial by fire in the last year and a half, 2 years, of not knowing where we're headed. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's day to day. What do I do next? And we have a choice. We can curl up into the fetal position and and just live from that place. Or we can know the imminent strength of who we are as the divine, and that we are here to blossom and grow even in the midst of when it looks like you can't thrive. That's the transcendent part. That's the transcendent part. And so I know that each one of us is here to understand that the dance between those two is really a critical part of our spiritual growth. I had a teacher when I was going through ministerial training, and it was right around December, January. It was around the new year. And I remember us talking about goals. And she said to us as a class, "I don't make goals." Well, this was a very foreign idea to me because I lived my life by goals. And I said, "How do you do it then?" And she said, "I wake up every morning and I say in my prayers, how can I serve, Spirit? How can I serve?" And something always shows up for me to do. Now, at the time, that was a really radical concept for me. I really didn't understand it. And as I have spiritually matured, I understand it more and more. That it's great to have goals. I'm not saying don't. But what if we live from the place that trusted that everything that we are meant to do and be and have is right here when we simply lean into the I don't know? Because if we're not leaning into the I don't know, we're missing the transcendent part. If we're only saying, I'm only going to go if I'm certain, we're missing the transcendent part of that God experience. This is what I have been challenged with for several years now, of understanding that sometimes when you think you're headed in one direction, Spirit might take a little detour, and you're going, wait a minute, I was headed down this road here, and that's okay. The detour is the juice of life, if we simply allow it to be. If we simply allow it to be. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, we are fulfilling our destiny when we think of ourselves as already divine and perfect. That's the imminent, right? But then he says, Troward tells us that the divine spirit is the limitless potential of human life, which means that the human is really divine, but will ever evolve into newer and better states of conscious living. I know that when I have evolved the most, I have allowed myself to be in the transcendent the most. And when I have allowed myself to be in that transcendent place, bit by bit by bit, put my toe in the water and go, okay, I can try this. Okay, I can try this. When I finally step into that place, I find that there is a potential there that my finite mind hadn't even seen yet. Isn't that the beauty of the God that is us, is that there is something so far beyond what our finite minds can see and understand that we get to experience the growth that comes from leaning into that. Our transcendent part of us is one of the most delicious, juicy parts that we can experience. So, there is a dance that goes between the imminent and the transcendent. See, most of us get that I am, the imminent part. Most of us understand that, and we're standing very firmly in that on a day-to-day basis. It's the transcendent that coaxes us, encourages us to live on the edge, to live in that mysterious place that we don't really know yet, and yet we feel that calling from deep within that's saying, try this. Just try this. And that's the place where we get to surrender, isn't it? We get to surrender that maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe there is something within me that knows something more. Living in the I don't know space requires two things: humility and courage. Humility, thinking I don't have all the answers. And courage to step up and say, I'm going to give this a shot because I know that the God within me is right there with me. So today, I want to shake up our certainty a little bit. There's a wonderful story about a woman. This is a story about one's soul journey. And it's about a woman, she's sitting on a bench with a wise old one, and before her are four paths. Now, there's a path behind her. That's the path that she came from. She knows where she came from. She knows that she is not meant to go back. There's a path to the left, a path to the right. Now, she's already tried both of those paths. She knows that they just lead her right back to this place. The fourth path is going straight ahead, and it's right at the edge of a cliff. So as she knows that when she moves towards that path, that there is actually something that she's going to have to jump off of, and she can't see where it's going. That's the journey of our soul, isn't it? I know the transcendence, this living in the mystery, is something that allows us to say, wait a minute, there's a cliff there, and I'm going to trust that I have wings when I get to that place and I jump, and that I'll be able to land in a beautiful and more wonderful place. Many years ago, I was working in radio. I was working at an NPR radio station. I was their director of marketing. And from the moment I got into that position, the station manager and I just did not get along. We were just not a good match. Finally, after about 6 months of there being less than wonderful occasions that we came together, let's just put it like that. And I knew that this was going to be a miserable job if I stayed in it. The station manager actually came to me and he said, I'd like to have your resignation. And I was like, oh my God, I had never been fired. This was a huge blow to my ego because I thought, I can't believe that they don't want me. Who wouldn't want me? Who wouldn't want this? You know, I'm great. And it was a real shock to me. And I realized in that moment I had two choices. I could stay and remain miserable, and he was going to make my life more difficult. That's what he was really making clear. Or I could go off the cliff. I could take a step towards the cliff. I had no idea what that meant. So I gave him my resignation, and I said, okay, that's wonderful, bye. And I decided, you know what? I don't know what's next. I'd already worked in radio. I'd worked for television stations. And I knew that that really wasn't where I was supposed to be. That was the left and the right for me. I'd already done that. But as I was meditating, it came to me, try an ad agency. Work for an ad agency. I'd never worked for an ad agency. But I thought, okay. So I barely knew the owners of one of the ad agencies in town. And it was a man and a woman that owned the agency. And I arranged a meeting with them. And I sat down. And I laid out a whole vision about, with my media background, how I could come in and I could be their very first account executive and help grow the company. And to my surprise, they offered me a job. They said, okay. They created a position for me. That became one of the best jobs I ever had because it was far better suited to my skills and my talents. If I hadn't jumped off the cliff, though, I would have stayed in a place that clearly was not mine. Can you relate to that? And so the transcendent part of me was just trusting that I simply, even though I didn't know the form it was going to take, that if I just took the next step, that all would be revealed to me at the appropriate time. And so I moved from a place that was like, wait a minute. Just like Dr. Barber said, I can accept my good, however it comes to me and through me. I can know that I may not even be able to see it on the horizon yet. But within 2 weeks of my last boss saying, I want your resignation, I had a brand new job. This was an important step for me in my understanding of how I simply needed to step into the transcendent part of me. And that even if my finite mind didn't have all the steps laid out, I could trust that something did. And today, I'd like to thank that station manager. I'd like to thank him because he was one of the most important steps in my growth there. Can you look back and see someone that at the time was a villain in your life, and now you can say, thank you. You got me out of where I needed to leave, And now I'm in a place that is so much beyond what I could have imagined. His name was Pat Crawford. Thank you, Pat Crawford. I am so grateful. Because, see, Spirit brings us these things, and as long as we have the humility to accept that maybe I don't know everything, maybe this isn't the perfect job for me, maybe this isn't the perfect relationship for me. Been there? Anybody been there? And then we get to, as Marianne Williamson says, if you stay in the train station with the same train, a new one can't come in. And so I had to get out of that train station so that a new one could come in and accept the good that was there waiting for me. Rumi, we all love Rumi, and he says, and you, when will you begin that long journey into yourself? Because isn't that what we're talking about? The transcendence is not anything out there. I'm not talking about a bearded guy in the sky. I'm talking about that which is out there that is unknown, unseeable, and it's still a part of the great magic and mystery of life. And the older I get, the more spiritually mature I get, the more I understand I've barely scratched the surface of what I know. That's how when people say, I got this covered, I go, that was just an invitation to Spirit, wasn't it? But when I'm willing to say, I don't know, there's something there that allows me to let something beyond my finite mind cook the magic and make my life transform into something even greater. You know, one of the questions that I'm asked as a minister a lot is, how do I find my purpose? I think that's one of the most interesting questions anybody can ask. And this wonderful book called The Practice by Seth Godin is a great book about, it's mostly about if you are in the creative arts, then just do it. If you're a painter, paint. If you are a writer, write. And I would add to that, if you're a spiritual being, practice your principles. Do the principles. That's really what we're talking about here. But I'm going to read something from this book, which is about finding your passion. He says, one question comes up in my podcast the most often. Where do I find my passion? And the corollary, if I'm not passionate about my work, what should I do? Once you decide to trust yourself, you will have found your passion. You are not born with it, and you don't have just one passion. It's not domain specific, it's a choice. Many of us, if we've lived long enough, our passions change. And he says, our passion is simply the work we've trained ourselves, we've trusted ourselves to do. This is worth deconstructing because the strategy of seeking your calling, and he has that in quotes, gives you a marvelous place to hide. I am so guilty of that. I'm finding myself. I'm finding what my passion is, and that's a wonderful place to hide, he says. After all, who wants to do difficult work that doesn't fulfill us? Who wants to commit to a journey before we know what we're meant to do? And yet this is exactly what we need to do. The trap is this, and I've got this on the slides for you. He says the trap is this. Only after we do the difficult work does it become our calling. Only after we trust the process does it become our passion. And then he ends it with, do what you love is for amateurs. Love what you do is the mantra for professionals. Now that's different, isn't it, from what we have. But this morning when we're talking about living from that space, I am here to do something, and I know it's something great, and I may not know what the form is yet, but I'm going to love what I do as I get to that place. Does that make sense? I'm going to know that I'm given exactly the resources and the desires that I need to follow that, and then I'm going to trust that that is good, that that is where I need to be. And that's how we become. See, your purpose is what you choose. and then loving it with every fiber of your being. And you get to change your mind, too. Isn't that great? We get to change our mind. The trick, here's the trick, and I love how Barbara said that in her piece. The trick is choosing a purpose that isn't tied to a form. And hear me when I say this. I heard Cory Booker say this a few years ago. He said, a lot of people ask me, are you going to run for president? This is before he ran for the last presidential election. And he said, I know that I'm here to serve this country and to serve especially the children of our country. So if the President of the United States, if that job is the job to do it, then I know that that's right. And so he was totally letting go of the form and knowing that his purpose was a higher one, to serve. And I've never forgotten that. He wasn't as interested in the form as he was the opportunity to serve the constituency that he felt called to serve. So when we're choosing a form, because for years I thought my form was to be a pulpit minister. I thought that that's what I was here to serve as a pulpit minister. Now I recognize that that's a wonderful way to serve, but it's not the only way to serve. I can serve in so many other ways, and I'm simply awaiting Spirit's next calling for me. It doesn't matter how, it only matters that I serve and I step up. So, are you attached to your form? Let it go. Let it go. And lean into the transcendence. I heard this wonderful verse the other day. I was actually watching a movie on Netflix. I love how Spirit just dumps these things into me on a regular basis. And I love sacred scripture, all kinds of sacred scripture. And I love the Bible because it's the story of man. I don't take it literally, but I love the stories in there that I resonate with. And this particular verse comes from Isaiah. Isaiah was a prophet, and in this particular verse, Isaiah 6:8, he's having a vision. And in this vision, the Spirit, God, is saying to him, I know I need to send out someone to do this mission. Who shall I send? And I said, and this is from Isaiah said, here am I, send me. Now, he didn't say, I'll go if you'll give me the business plan in triplicate so I know every strategic point I need to know before I step out. He said, here am I, send me. Isn't that the way? Isn't that leaning into the transcendence? He didn't know what was next. He just knew that it was his to do if he was called to step into something that was greater than him. The transcendence can pull us and be that purpose for us, and we don't even know what it's going to be yet. Send me, send me. And so I love that we have the opportunity to say, I'm here to, you choose whatever that verb is going to be. What is your verb? It could be as simple as serve. Send me. Send me. Lean into the I don't know, where the juice, where the evolvement is going to take place. And know that there is an underpinning, that Spirit is always there allowing you to grow and nurture in ways that you have never grown before. Spirit is imminent and transcendent. It's not about what we create in this world. It's about who we become when we create. And we don't know what we're going to become until we do it. And that's part of what we're all about here, is we don't know what we'll become when we become business owners, parents, whatever, ministers, practitioners. We don't know what we'll become, but we're willing to step into that and say, I am here. So I'm going to close with this story about someone who stepped into the mystery. You may know her. Her name is Louise Penny, best-selling author. And she's so best-selling, she sold 10 million books in North America, and her books have been translated into 28 languages. I'd say that's a success story. And this book set here that I put in this slide is her first set of books, which are about Chief Detective Ganache. And that was the series that she first wrote about. And it became a great success eventually. But she said in an email recently that she sent out to her fans because she had just published her newest book, she thanked her fans and she shared the story of the humble beginnings of her writing career. And this is what she wrote. Do you remember when Still Life, the first Gamache book, came out, and no one bought it? Well, a few did. And then the tour that Michael and I organized and paid for, and no one showed up. Well, a few did. But in most places, I stood at the front of the room and looked at empty chairs and tried to pretend it didn't matter or hurt. What if Louise Penny had given up after that disappointing start? What if she had said, this isn't working? I still feel called to write, but it's just not working. She kept leaning into the mystery of what is next for me. And her writing got better and better and more accepted and widely read. And now people think, oh, she just did that and was successful right off the bat. It doesn't ever happen like that, does it? It takes the work, the dedication, the commitment, the consciousness. And that's what we're doing when we're in that transcendent space. We're simply building our consciousness to accept that which is next. So let's just do the work. Let's show up. Let's show up and be that which we are here to become. Let's be the wonderful dance of being the imminent. I am here. I am rooted and transplanted in this thing called life. And yet there is still an unknown part of me that is waiting to be on the cusp of what's next in my life. There's the dance for us. Let's dance with all our heart this week. Namaste.